A summer homecoming. I always loved the summer break, a brief respite from the grueling schedule of college. My days were spent with friends, nights filled with laughter and bonfires. This summer was no different until I returned home. The small town of Hartsville, where I grew up, was the epitome of tranquility. Rolling hills, lush forests, and friendly neighbors greeted me as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The sight of my mother, waiting on the porch, brought a smile to my face. She looked the same as ever, cheerful, warm, and welcoming. "Welcome home, Alex," she called out, enveloping me in a tight hug. "I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too, Mom," I replied, feeling a genuine sense of relief and happiness to be back. The first few days were perfect. We caught up on everything, and she cooked all my favorite meals. It felt good to be taken care of again, to be home. But then, things started to change. It began subtly. I would catch glimpses of shadows out of the corner of my eye, fleeting figures that disappeared when I turned my head. At first, I brushed it off as stress or exhaustion, but the occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. One night, I woke up drenched in sweat. A cold chill ran down my spine as I realized I wasn't alone. A shadowy figure stood at the foot of my bed. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for the light, but there was nothing there. Just the darkness and my racing thoughts. The next morning, I mentioned it to my mom. "You're probably just tired, dear," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "College must have been really hard on you." "Yeah, maybe," I agreed, though unease gnawed at me. The occurrences didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. I began to see the shadowy figure during the day, lurking in the corners of rooms, just out of sight. I started to question my sanity. Was I imagining things? Was I losing my mind? I decided to take a walk one evening, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As I strolled through the familiar streets of Hartsville, the sensation of being watched never left me. Every rustling leaf and distant whisper set my nerves on edge. The shadows seemed to follow me, growing darker and more menacing as the sun dipped below the horizon. When I returned home, my mom was waiting with dinner. The food smelled delicious, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. "Are you okay, Alex?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." That night, the nightmare began. I woke to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the voices grew louder, more insistent. They were speaking in a language I didn't understand, guttural and ancient. My room felt like a tomb, the air heavy and suffocating. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed, pinned to the bed by an invisible force. The shadowy figure was back, but this time it was closer. I could see its eyes hollow, empty voids that seemed to swallow the light. It reached out a hand, and I felt an icy grip on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Panic surged through me, and I fought with all my strength to break free. Suddenly, the figure vanished, and I bolted upright, gasping for air. My room was empty, but the sense of dread lingered. I knew then that whatever was happening to me wasn't just in my mind. The next day, I started looking into the history of our house. I visited the local library and combed through old records. To my horror, I discovered that our home had a dark past. It was built on the ruins of an old asylum, a place where unspeakable experiments were conducted on the patients. Many of them had died under mysterious circumstances, their souls trapped in torment. I raced home, my mind spinning with the implications. My mom was in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked. I watched her for a moment, my heart heavy with fear and suspicion. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. "Of course, dear." "What's wrong?" she asked, turning to face me. "There's something wrong with this house. I've been seeing things, hearing things. I found out that it was built on an old asylum. People died here, Mom. Horrible things happened." Her expression changed, a flicker of something dark and unreadable crossing her face. "Alex, you're imagining things. This house is perfectly fine." "No, it's not," I shouted, the frustration and fear boiling over. "Something is happening to me, and I don't think it's just this house. I think it's you." She froze, her eyes widening. "What are you talking about?" "The salt," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The strange salt you've been putting in my food. It's making me see things, isn't it?" Her face twisted with a mixture of guilt and desperation. "Alex, I only wanted to protect you, to keep you safe. You've been so stressed with college, and I thought if you stayed here, you could rest and recover. By drugging me? By making me think I'm going insane?" I backed away, my heart pounding. "I did it out of love," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I can't lose you, Alex. You're all I have." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, the person I trusted most in the world, had been poisoning me. My mind raced, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I pretended to, pushing the food around my plate until my mom was satisfied. I needed a clear head to figure out my next move. As I lay in bed, I heard the whispering again, the voices of the tormented souls trapped in this house. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I felt a strange kinship with them, a shared sense of betrayal and suffering. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't just run. I needed proof, something to show the authorities. The next morning, while my mom was out, I searched the house. In the basement, I found what I was looking for, a hidden stash of the strange salt. I took some samples and snapped photos of everything. When my mom returned, I was ready. "Alex, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm taking this with me." I held up the bag of salt. "Please, Alex, don't do this," she begged, reaching out to me. "I have to," I replied, backing away. "You need help, Mom?" "Real help." As I walked out the door, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I was leaving behind everything I knew, but I was also escaping a nightmare. I drove straight to the police station, handing over the evidence and telling them everything. The investigation that followed uncovered the truth. The salt was a rare and powerful hallucinogen, capable of inducing vivid and terrifying visions. My mom had been using it to keep me close, driven by a desperate and twisted love. But as the authorities delved deeper, a more chilling revelation surfaced. My mother hadn't acted alone. She had been manipulated, controlled by the same malevolent spirits that haunted me. The shadowy figures, the tormented souls of the asylum's victims, had found a way to influence the living. They had latched onto my mother, exploiting her fear of losing me to ensure she did their bidding. The salt was their instrument, a conduit for their dark influence. Confronted with this new horror, my mom broke down, recounting how the voices had first appeared to her, promising to keep me safe if she followed their instructions. They preyed on her loneliness and desperation, twisting her love into something monstrous. The spirits were exorcised from our home, and my mother was taken to a facility where she could get the help she needed. I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The house was condemned, its dark history finally exposed. But the scars remained, a constant reminder of the horrors I had endured. Even now, I sometimes hear the whispering, feel the chill of those empty eyes watching me. But I remind myself that I'm free, that I've escaped the nightmare. And I hold on to the hope that one day, I'll find peace.